There was no formula found. People are mad at me for pointing this out. You should be mad at yourself. There was no formula found. This was an outlier. So, Jody, those two things aren't mutually exclusive to me. The Eagles deserve credit for taking care of business, and it doesn't mean Jack, you know what.
Right. It's good to have the Mac Man back.
Yeah.
McMullen back after a victorious trip to Detroit, which he was just sharing with us the phenomenal time that he had in Motown this week. Got out and about, huh, John? Painted the
Yeah.
city red.
Got to see the Uniroyal tire, the big Uniroyal tire on the interstate, which is exciting.
I've only been to Detroit like twice in my whole life. Where the hell's the Uniroyal tire?
It's a big tire. It's on one of the interstates out there, but we drove by it. It's actually pretty cool. I didn't go. I wasn't Clark Griswold. I didn't go over and stop and say, "Yeah, look, kids, the Uniroyal tire." But Detroit, actually, it's very nice near the stadium. It's really underrated. Comerica Park is right next door, right across the street. It's downtown, nice setting. Ford Field's nice, but yeah, I mean, you're going to Key West this weekend. I'd rather be you than me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I haven't had a weekend off, and I've had one weekend off in the last 6 years. So this will be number 2 in the past 6 years. So yes, I'm looking forward to it. I got a little family wedding that we have to attend. But I will be watching on Sunday when the Eagles take on the Chargers. But before we go there, we got to take a look back at this Sunday's game against the Lions.
We got to say Happy Trade Deadline Day first.
Oh, yeah,
that's what I want to get. It's Happy Trade Deadline Day.
We've got how many hours? 4 and 4 is 8. 8 hours until the trade deadline. Under 8 hours now. And yeah, I got a lot of questions I want to run by you there. But first things first, the beatdown of the Detroit Lions. I want to give the Eagles all the credit for everything they did yesterday here on the show. Myself, Jeff Kerr, gave Nick Sirianni a ton of, Jonathan Gannon a ton of credit, the players a ton of credit. How bad are the Lions?
Oh, man. Oh, I was wrong about them playing. No, I'm with you. Look, you can only play who's on the schedule. The Eagles deserve a ton of credit for taking care of business. That's how I described it. That was a business trip. And they did their job, and they got the heck out of there with the easiest win I've ever seen in my life. But I don't know how much you can take out of that game. I really don't. I think it's such an outlier. It's so meaningless from a standpoint that the competition was so pathetic. And maybe it was because of the injuries on top of what they had coming into the game. And we had discussed they've been competitive in certain games and played hard, and I read that part of it wrong. I mean, once they got behind, it was over. We've been talking all year. The Eagles want to play from the lead. Now, every NFL team wants to do that, but it's a little bit more important for the Eagles because they just don't have the ability to come back with the passing game down 2 scores. So everything lined up perfectly once the Eagles got the lead. They could just run the football in the second half. So 1980 Philadelphia was rejoicing. But it's not sustainable. People are saying they found the formula. They didn't find anything unless the formula is the Detroit Lions each and every week. I mean, that's not going to happen. And it starts this Sunday with the Chargers, as you mentioned. And by the way, the Chargers are terrible stopping the run.
Correct.
So we'll talk about this. Well, you're not going to be here, but we'll get into it later in the week. We'll talk about the Chargers. But it's different. Even though they're terrible at stopping the run, they're also capable of putting up points. So you just can't sit and hand the football off 46 times or Justin Herbert's going to beat you throwing the football. There was no formula found. People are mad at me for pointing this out. You should be mad at yourself. There was no formula found. This was an outlier. So, Jody, those two things aren't mutually exclusive to me. The Eagles deserve credit for taking care of business, and it doesn't mean Jack, you know what.
Right. I tried to tell you last week that the Lions were the worst team in the National Football League. And this is a league that has the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars in it. I still say the Detroit Lions are the worst team in the National Football League, and I thought very much the Eagles were going to go in there and take care of business, which is exactly what they did. Now, Sirianni does get bonus points because watching his first 7 games, I thought, well, he's going to do what he always does. He's going to run RPOs, and Jalen Hurts will be put in compromised situations, and they're going to have to make some big plays late in the game. No, the Lions are that bad. They're that terrible, and he recognized it, and we had a good thing going on the ground. They couldn't stop it. The offensive linemen were eating it up, coming off the field, saying, stick with this coach, stick with this coach. He did just that. So it shows me that Nick Sirianni does have the mindset of we're going to do, and he verbalized it both after the game and yesterday as well, we're going to do what we need to do each and every single week. That you can try and put a label on us, or this is what the Philadelphia Eagles, and this is what the Philadelphia Eagles do. Not accepting that. We're going to do on a given week what we need to do to win a game. Now, it's easier said than done because the Eagles roster has some talent, but it's not the deepest roster in the National Football League that they can dictate terms on a week-in, week-out basis. But if the coach has that mindset that he is going to stay open-minded about what he needs to do, what plays he needs to call, what kind of system he needs to use on a given week to beat an opponent, that's a real good thing.
Yeah, I think I've been pretty consistent. I think Nick Sirianni took way too many hits for the Blower comments, and, the players enjoyed them, if anything. And I think you kind of saw that during that game. And I always go back to the Super Bowl run because I think, and our buddy Zach Berman even wrote the book and he called it Underdogs. I think that was the dumbest narrative, not Zach. I think that was the dumbest narrative in history for this reason. Everybody knew the Eagles were the best team in the NFC that year. Carson Wentz got hurt. And that's what changed. That's what changed.
Carson getting hurt. Okay, I see what you're doing.
That's what changed. If the Eagles have Carson Wentz, they're significant favorites against Atlanta. They're significant favorites against Minnesota. And then maybe in the Super Bowl, because of the Patriots and their reputation, they wouldn't have been favorites. So the whole idea of underdogs was kind of a crocky, what. It was about one player. It was about Nick Foles and people not believing in Nick Foles. And Nick Foles deserves credit for doing what he did. We all know that. My only point being Doug Peterson used it. It doesn't matter if it's true. If you use it to your advantage and people bought in, not just fans, but also players, it's great. And that's the same thing with Nick Sirianni and the flower power thing. Everybody's making fun of it. You used it. And if it works, hey, use it. Great. But the players had no problem with the speech. It was sort of the outside noise. Now, obviously, it's a much lesser stage. It's not as important of what Doug was able to do with the underdog team. But I just used that as an example. Sure. It doesn't have to be true. You can use it. Any kind of bulletin board material, if you can use it, use it. And if it works, great.
And when you get one of your team leaders to pick up the baton and run with you like Jason Kelsey did, that's only going to help sell your flower narrative, as perplexing as it may have been. If it's working for them, you got to just take it. You say, thank you very much. We'll continue in this vein. Good for Nick Sirianni. Yesterday, I caught the press availability that you were part of, and he was asked about guys that he played. I mentioned this with Jeff Curry yesterday. One of the benefits, side benefits, and maybe underrated benefits of a 44-6 win is you get to empty the bench. Everybody gets a chance to play. Guys who don't usually get snaps, who are relegated to special team stuff, like Marlon, or doesn't get on the field. He doesn't play specials, and he just doesn't get any snaps from defense. He got a chance to play. I think it's a good rallying call for the team, and it kind of uplifts the spirits of the entire roster. Part of that was, tiempo de garbage time. But in a couple spots, it was trying to get young guys some more reps. Davion Taylor ended up playing the most defensive snaps at linebacker. Milton Williams ended up playing the most defensive snaps on the defensive line, and Sirianni was asked about it, and he didn't just poo-poo it. He didn't give it a ton of, oh, that's exactly what we're doing, trying to play our younger guys so we can evaluate them. He didn't come out and say that, but he also didn't dismiss it either, which tells me the Eagles did it with a purpose this past week. There were a couple of young guys they wanted to get more action and more of a look at. And I say good for the Eagles on that front.
Yeah, definitely linebacker. I mean, that's where they made the shift from a personnel perspective. And TJ Edwards was sort of the guy, the number one role. They've been rotating, and then it was Davion Taylor. And they've been trending in that direction. They've been rotating the linebackers, which I asked Nick Sirianni about yesterday. It's not a normal thing to do in the NFL. It's not a rotational position. Certain positions are rotational, certain aren't. Typically, linebackers aren't. You have one or two that play the vast majority of the snaps. And I think the Eagles want to get there, but they aren't there and they don't have the talent to be there. So obviously, early in the season was Eric Wilson, Alex Singleton. Now he's rotating. Eric Wilson was a healthy scratch, so that was the biggest news. So TJ Edwards and Davion Taylor had been sort of starting in the run support looks, and then they would bring in Singleton and Wilson for the pass coverage looks. Yesterday, it just got ramped up to Edwards being more of the sort of 3-down option. And see, that to me is interesting. Can you continue to do that against a team like the Chargers? Because they're going to throw the football. And they throw the football to the backs as well. And they have a long history, really dating back to when Nick Sirianni was there, of being very successful at that. And even prior, when Darren Sproles was there, they're very successful. If they see TJ Edwards on the field, if they see Davion Taylor on the field, they're going to try to take advantage of it. So that, to me, is something you look at. Was that tweak made for the Detroit Lions because they can't take advantage of it? Or was that tweak made because this is our best option? So that's one of the interesting things that I think we're going to have to see how it unfolds moving forward. The other guys, and Milton Williams, we had talked to him. He had not played well as a rookie, and he got a game ball. So he played very well. But everybody else, if you look at it, Milton and Teron Jackson, and you saw Andre Sachere, I always screw up his name first, out there. Sean Bradley, Tay Gowan made his Eagles debut. Josiah Scott. You mentioned Marlon Tuipulotu was out there that was because it was a blowout. And right. The same thing on the offensive side. There was a little bit of a tweak because of who they were playing, and there was way more 12 personnel. The Eagles have gone to pretty much exclusively 11, certainly after the Zach Ertz trade. Yesterday, you saw Dallas Goedert, you saw a lot of Jack Stoll, even Richard Rodgers, because they were running the football so effectively. I don't think that continues as an example. Plus, you got, Brett Toth was in the game, Andre Dillard, Gardner Minshew, obviously would start with him at quarterback. So all of that was more of the garbage time aspect.
Let me get a couple quick questions on the guys who did get a chance to play. And I'd say the Chargers have a history going even further back than Darren. Still, I'll go all the way back to LaDainian Tomlinson. The Chargers have always been a team that throws the ball with a guy out of the backfield. LaDainian's one of the best in the history of the National Football League to be able to do it, make plays out of the backfield. I don't think they have that type of a running back right now. Eckler's good. He's no LT. But
you are
back to the Eagles. One guy was a little disappointed with the fact that he didn't get more reps was Kayvon Wallace. He was in that same mix with Josiah Scott and Tay and getting their Eagle feet wet and stuff like that. The very, very much all backup defensive backfield. I thought he was going to be more like Davion Taylor and Milt Williams and get some snaps when the game was still sitting, at least in somewhat undecided form. Come on, you knew as soon as the Eagles got up by 2 touchdowns, the Lions weren't rallying to win the game, but you get my point. Do you think this is a week for them to try and get a little bit more out of Wallace? Are we going to get the chance to see him more? Because there is a guy that you still need to get a read on for future purposes. Is he a guy that the Eagles can lean on more heavily next year?
Yeah, I don't know because the Eagles really like Marcus Epps, and Marcus is a guy that is essentially played, and part of it is injury related in that Kayvon has got banged up on a couple of occasions. Those guys were kind of even in training camp, more or less, and you had one who was the single high safety type more, and that's Marcus, and one who was more the box type in Kayvon. But I think as Kayvon has been out of the lineup and Marcus has continued to play, I think the Eagles have, liked the way he's handled the job and think he's sort of won that third safety job. And really, he might be pushing Anthony Harris at this point to be the second safety, opposite Rodney McLeod when Anthony is healthy or Anthony gets traded or what have you. They really like Marcus Epps. So I think if it comes down to Marcus Epps or Kayvon Wallace, Marcus is going to play at this point. And he's a young player as well. So I think people kind of forget that because he was acquired in a different fashion. He was drafted by Minnesota, picked up on waivers. So, they look at Kayvon Wallace, who's a draft pick here, and say, well, we got to get him on the field. The Eagles have kind of, Marcus is playing better. Marcus is going to play.
Fair enough. And Epps did play well on Sunday against the Lions. I thought he and TJ Edwards both had phenomenal games in the back seven for the Eagles. By the way, do you call him Marcus or do you call him Epsy?
I call him Epsy. I love it. I love the Epsy nickname. That was a Schwartz. That was a Schwartz thing, man. Everybody had the hockey nickname.
Schwartz called him Epsy.
I call Schwartz Schwartzy. Because he gives everybody the hockey nickname, and Epsy is Epsy.
There you go. He is John McMullen. Good to have him back with me, Jody Mack. We're your Birds 365 guys. We have only started to talk about the trade deadline. Now we use a couple of mentions in there. I think Johnny Mack threw one name in there that kind of spot. Oh, Anthony, could I trade Harris off the injured list on this trade deadline day? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think anybody's acquiring. But I got a couple angles that I do want to ask both John Mack and our first guest and our second guest. We have two good guests coming your way today. First would be Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports Philly and the Eagle Eye podcast with our buddy Ruben Frank. A little later on, we'll talk to our pal Rob Marty from the Associated Press, who does cover the entire league these days. He always seems to get involved with Eagles stuff on a week-in, week-out basis. He just can't let it go. Even though he covers the entire league, he's got to get his Eagles question in on the Eagles media availabilities. So we'll talk about both the entire league and the Eagles on trade deadline.
We're talking playoffs, I think, from Rob. Didn't he ask a playoff question? I gotta reload.
Was that his question yesterday? Did he really go down the playoff route?
I think it was. I'll double check.
Jeff Kerr was Johnny on the spot yesterday. One game out of a playoff spot, and the team that holds that last playoff spot right now would be the Carolina Panthers. Yeah. Well, the Eagles have a victory over, a tiebreaker over. So, we'll continue to let playoff images dance in our heads after a 44-6 win. We'll see if that's actually realistic.
We got to put Jim Moore out there. Playoffs.
I say no, thank you. I think the Eagles still need to sell today, but that's just me. We'll see what Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports Philly has to say. He joins us next here on Birds 365.